Welcome to the Opal Foundation series. At Opal, we're fortunate to work with some of the most exceptional brands in the world. In this series, we bring you lessons learned from the front lines by extraordinary storytellers. In this 4-chapter episode, Creativity in Storytelling, we welcome Ashley Edwards, Communications Manager for Human Exploration and Operations at NASA.
Hi, Ashley. Welcome to the Opal Foundation series.
Hi, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you. Thanks for sharing your story with us. Let's get started. How long have you been at NASA and what is your role there?
Yeah, I've been at NASA for 15 years and I am currently the Communications Manager for the Office of Human Spaceflight.
Human Spaceflight. How does that differ from the other parts of NASA?
So the organization that I'm officially a part of is the Human Exploration and Operations Mission Directorate, but we lovingly call it Human Spaceflight. And that differs from the rest of NASA in the sense of the first word, human. So really anything that involves a human going somewhere, that's us. So we have a lot of amazing robotic exploration. We have amazing aeronautic exploration at NASA. But the difference between us and everybody else is the human element in space.
What kind of a marketer or communicator would you say that you are?
Yeah, I'm definitely not a classically trained marketer, but my entire career has been around communicating with specific audiences, communicating specific content or material to those audiences, and also simplifying that content into a way that the audiences can understand it. So when you put all of that together, it sounds a whole lot like marketing.
What was your degree in?
I got my master's in public administration, and I got my undergraduate degree in political science and with a focus on international affairs.
Okay, let's talk about NASA. Why is NASA so unique in its approach to storytelling and communications?
So NASA has a really unique approach to storytelling. For one thing, what a lot of people don't realize is in the original Space Act, where NASA was created by Congress, one of the key goals, there are 3 of them, is to transparently communicate what we learn to, and I think this is a quote, the broadest or widest possible audience. So we've got this mandate. It's a part of law. We're supposed to communicate what we're doing and what we're learning to as many people as we can. That's a part of being the Civil Space Agency. But on the flip side of that, we are not allowed to do paid marketing. We're not allowed to really invest in a lot of brand research or product research or anything like that. As a matter of fact, we can't really even poll the American public about what they think about certain things because of something called the Paperwork Reduction Act. So, which I'm very, very familiar with. These are kind of constraints. So on the one hand, we're being told, tell everybody what you're doing. And then also, but you can't pay for, putting your information in a spot. You can't do a lot of research on it. So you really don't know how perception is moving or where you need to meet people. So some of that is really interesting. It's paradoxical in some ways, and it creates a really fun challenge. So that's one thing that's pretty unique about NASA. But the other thing that's unique about NASA is we have killer content. I mean, it's amazing. We have the Hubble Space Telescope. We have astronauts. We have so now the way I think about it is, how do I get this killer content to as many people as possible organically? And that's my challenge every single day.
Yeah, well, I mean, it definitely sounds like a challenge, at least to me anyway, but here you have to navigate these constraints while being held to the same or really even harder or more oversight than a typical company. So how do you do that?
So in a situation where you definitely need to get your message across to a broad audience and you're bound by constraints, or as I like to call them, opportunities. And that's not actually just I actually want to talk about this. That's not actually a joke. They really are opportunities. The constraints that you're bound by allow you to not worry about stuff, right? I don't worry about paid media. that is not in my job jar. That is not something that's on my brain. That's not something I have to think about. It's not in the world as far as the work that I do. So, I mean, if I were talking to somebody in marketing from another organization and they wanted to have a long conversation about paid media and placement or all of this kind of stuff, like I really honestly wouldn't be able to keep up. But that's awesome in some ways, because the less you have to worry about, the more you can really dig in and focus on what you're doing with what you've got. And so it's the difference, I think, sometimes between being wide and deep. You know, I mean, because I don't have to worry about those things, because they're not a solution, they're not a natural solution. Like, well, I'm just going to put this up and hope that enough people see it over millions of times, you know, and I actually have to get to know, you know, the people, and the people have to get to know me.
Okay, so speaking of getting to know you, let's get into your process. How do you break it down to ensure that your team is operating in the most efficient way?
When operating in a world like this, when you have constraints, but you also have a great story to tell, you know, I have sort of a recipe for success. And the very first part of it is understand the value of your brand. That is core to everything. You have to know what your brand brings to the table. That's very different than core values or anything like that. It's when you bring your product into the world, when people see your brand, what is the first thing they think about? What can you tell people my brand represents? That is the value of your brand. And you have to know it. And it's not always what you think it is. You actually, if I were going to say spend research on anything, it is understanding the value of your brand. Talk to people around you about your brand. What does this mean to you? You're either going to find out that it doesn't mean anything to anybody. Well, that's a starting point. Or that it means something that you don't think it means to people. So why is that? That's a starting point. It gives you a place to begin the basis of your storytelling. And I think one of the things that can be very disconcerting to people is when, to them, their perception of the brand has one set of values, but then they're selling something or you're doing something that doesn't align with those values, right? So when you put your brand up and you know what that value is that people are going to understand, then all your communications after that have to flow from that value. So, for example, based on a lot of deep digging over time, I believe, and my team believes, that NASA's brand, the value that our brand brings to the table, tends to be transparency, inspiration, hope. And that's a funny one. We really kind of got there in a roundabout way, but why would we be investing in the future, these long lead space programs and things like that, if people didn't have hope that the future was going to be better? So we can really bring, when we sit at the table with our brand, we want our communications and our partnerships to be around these kinds of ideas. Inspiration, transparency, education, hope, a little bit of boldness. You know, it's NASA. It's kind of an old-fashioned boldness. You know, it's the right stuff kind of boldness, and that's a little bit different than the, you know, freewheeling. I'm a teenager. I can go off and do something because I don't understand. I don't understand the consequences. This is an organization. This brand understands the consequences. We understand the consequences of our boldness deeply. We've lost crews, so and missions, but yet we're still bold. And so it's really like, if your brand was a person and you really needed to get to know that person and then whittle it down to like a few sentences. If somebody asked you, hey, tell me about so-and-so, you know, what are you left with? Well, you know, and I think knowing your brand on a personal level and then being able to advocate for your brand is the beginning of storytelling.
Cool. I like that a lot. All right. Can we stay on this just for one more second? how do you dig into like aligning the value of the brand to those communications that you create for it?
Your brand has to wear your communications. And so if you don't understand the way the brand acts, the way the brand is as an entity, you will try to hang things on it that don't fit. And it's probably a strange metaphor, but that's the way I think about it. Your brand really has something that you have to protect. It's like, imagine like a very close mute friend, right? Like you really have to protect it. And you really know what it is. And so people are going to try and shove all kinds of things at it. And it's your job to say, that's not true. That's not right. That doesn't work. That's the beginning. And so it's becoming so familiar with that personality, and it has one. I promise you. Even if you don't know what it is, it's because you haven't spent enough time with it. And if it really is a baby brand, like it hasn't become anything yet, you get to help shape it. You get to create it. You get to expose it to the world in ways that it will grow, and its environment will kind of nurture it. It's the weirdest way to think about it, but it's the only way I can think about it. It's an entity, and you're the protector.
Thank you for engaging with the Opal Foundation series. For more chapters from this episode and other inspiring stories from the world's best marketing and communications professionals, visit workwithopal.com.